You want a football quarterback? Let me tell you about pressure. Let me tell you about what it's like when your entire world is watching every single move you make, waiting for you to either become exactly what they predicted or crash and burn trying. That's where Shedeur Sanders is right now. And honestly, the way this whole thing is unfolding in Cleveland might be one of the most fascinating quarterback situations we've seen in years. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like being an NFL backup is some terrible fate. These guys are making life-changing money, living dreams that millions of kids have but never achieve. But Shedeur Sanders isn't just any backup. This is a guy who came into the league with more eyes on him than most first-round picks. The son of Deion Sanders, one of the flashiest, most confident players the NFL has ever seen. A college star who built a massive brand before ever taking a professional snap. Someone who's been doubted, criticized, hyped up, and torn down all at the same time. And now he's in Cleveland, behind Dillon Gabriel on the depth chart, waiting for his shot while the entire football world debates whether he's the real deal or just another overhyped prospect who couldn't handle the jump to the pros. Here's what's really going on right now and why this situation is so much more complicated than just backup quarterback works hard and might get a chance. The Browns are in a weird spot. They drafted Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, which means they invested a decent pick in him. Not a franchise-altering selection, but enough that the front office and coaching staff have some skin in the game. They want him to succeed because if he does, they look smart. If he doesn't, well, that's a wasted pick and more ammunition for critics who already think this franchise can't evaluate quarterback talent to save their lives. Gabriel's played 4 games so far this season, and the results have been mixed at best. One game where he looked competent, one where he was forgettable, one where he genuinely struggled, and one that fell somewhere in the middle. Not terrible, but definitely not the kind of performance that makes you think you found your franchise guy. And here's the thing that's driving people crazy. The play calling has been incredibly conservative. Short passes, safe routes, nothing that really tests defenses or pushes the offense to attack downfield. It's almost like the coaching staff is protecting Gabriel, keeping him in a bubble where his stats look okay, but the offense never really threatens anyone. Tony Rizzo, who's been covering Cleveland football for decades, has been all over this. He's been calling out the coaching staff for those safe play calls, pointing out that you can't really evaluate what you have in a quarterback if you never let him throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield. And he's right. What are we actually learning about Dillon Gabriel if every game plan is designed to minimize his impact rather than maximize his potential? Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders is sitting there on the bench, watching all this unfold, and according to everyone who's been paying attention, he's not sulking or complaining or causing drama. He's working every single day after practice ends. When most guys are heading to the showers or the training room, Shedeur's still out there throwing extra passes, working on his mechanics, studying film, doing everything you'd want from a guy who knows his moment is coming and wants to be ready when it arrives. That practice footage that went viral recently, that wasn't some staged publicity stunt. That was genuine video of Shedeur putting in work when nobody was asking him to, moving like a starter even though his nameplate says backup. The way he carries himself, the way he communicates with receivers, the way he processes information and adjusts on the fly, all of it screams starting quarterback. And people around the Browns facility are starting to notice. You hear whispers about how different the energy feels when Shedeur runs the scout team offense, how his teammates respond to him differently, how even some veterans have quietly mentioned to coaches that maybe, just maybe, they should see what this kid can do with the real offense in a real game. Now let's talk about the draft narrative, because this is where things get really interesting. People love to point out that 30 teams passed on Shedeur Sanders. They say it like it's this devastating piece of evidence that he's not that good, that NFL scouts and general managers saw something they didn't like. But here's what nobody wants to mention. 30 teams also passed on Dillon Gabriel. He wasn't some consensus first-round talent that Cleveland stole. He wasn't even a second-round guy. Gabriel went in the 3rd round, which means the entire league had multiple chances to draft him and said no thanks. So why is everyone acting like Gabriel is this proven commodity while Shedeur is still just a question mark? They both came from college with questions. They both fell further in the draft than their college production suggested they should. The only real difference is that Shedeur came with more hype, more media attention, and a famous last name that made people either love him or want to see him fail. The comparison to Cam Ward is absolutely wild to me. Tony Gross actually said with a straight face that he believes Dillon Gabriel is outperforming Cam Ward right now. Cam Ward, who was the #1 overall pick in the entire draft. The guy that an NFL team traded up to select first because they believed he was the best prospect available. And we're supposed to believe that Dillon Gabriel, who's looked average in 4 games and has the exact same number of wins as Ward, is somehow doing better. The mental gymnastics required to reach that conclusion are Olympic level. Both guys have 1 win. Both guys are on struggling teams. Both guys have shown flashes, but also serious limitations. The only difference is that Ward was expected to be great immediately, while Gabriel is getting graded on a curve because nobody expected much from a 3rd-round pick. That's not analysis, that's narrative protection. What makes this whole situation even more intense is the timeline that insiders are talking about. According to multiple people close to the organization, the Browns might be preparing to give Shedeur Sanders a real look after the bye week. Not just garbage time and a blowout loss, but actual meaningful snaps with a chance to win games. The plan that Rizzo laid out makes perfect sense if you're trying to properly evaluate your quarterbacks. Give Shedeur the entire bye week to fully immerse himself in the playbook, run him with the first-team offense and defense in practice so he can feel real NFL speed, let him build chemistry with the starting receivers, and then throw him into a game against the Jets coming out of the break. 4 games to close the season where he can show what he's really capable of. 4 games where the Browns can honestly assess whether they need to draft another quarterback or if they already have their guy sitting on the bench. The thing is, Cleveland doesn't have much to lose at this point. The season isn't going well. Dillon Gabriel hasn't seized the job and run away with it. The offense looks stuck. The fans are frustrated. What's the worst that happens if you start Shedeur? He struggles and you learn that he's not the answer? That's valuable information. He plays well, but the team still loses because of other issues. At least you found something to build around. He comes out and lights up defenses and gives the entire franchise a jolt of energy it desperately needs. That's obviously the best case scenario, but even in the worst case, you've gained clarity about your quarterback position going into the offseason. Keeping him on the bench doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help Dillon Gabriel get better. It doesn't help the team win games. And it definitely doesn't help you figure out if Shedeur Sanders is a legitimate NFL starter or not. What's really fascinating about Shedeur through all of this is how he's handled it. No complaints to the media, no cryptic social media posts, no drama whatsoever. He's just shown up every single day and worked like someone who knows exactly what's at stake. That maturity, that focus, that professionalism, those are traits you can't teach. Either you have that mental makeup or you don't, and Shedeur clearly does. His college tape shows a quarterback who could make every throw, who had excellent pocket presence, who could read defenses and make quick decisions. But college tape only tells you so much. The NFL is a different animal. The speed is faster, the windows are tighter, the defenses are more complex, and the margin for error is basically 0. Plenty of college stars have crashed and burned in the pros. Plenty of guys who looked unstoppable on Saturdays couldn't handle Sundays. But here's what gives me confidence in Shedeur. He's been preparing for this his entire life. Growing up as Deion Sanders' son meant growing up around NFL royalty. He's been in NFL locker rooms since he was a kid. He's heard the stories, seen the preparation, learned what it takes to succeed at the highest level from one of the best to ever do it. That doesn't guarantee success, but it definitely gives him advantages that most rookies don't have. He's not intimidated by the moment because he's been around these moments forever. The bright lights don't scare him because he's been in bright lights since birth. The pressure doesn't break him because pressure is all he's ever known. And maybe most importantly, he's got an edge to him, a confidence that walks right up to the line of arrogance without crossing it. He believes he belongs. He believes he can play at this level. And sometimes that belief is half the battle. The locker room dynamics are interesting too. You're starting to hear whispers that some players prefer Shedeur's style, that they think he gives the offense a different energy. That's not a knock on Dillon Gabriel necessarily, but it is telling. NFL players can sense things that don't show up on stat sheets. They know who commands a huddle. They know who makes everyone around them better just by being on the field. They know who has that intangible quality that separates good quarterbacks from great ones. And apparently enough players are seeing something in Shedeur that they're quietly letting it be known to coaches and staff. In the NFL, that matters. You can't just ignore what your veterans are telling you, especially when they're the ones who have to execute the game plan and play with whoever's under center. The coaching staff is in a tough position because they're essentially being asked to admit they might have been wrong about their initial assessment. Nobody likes doing that, especially not in a league where job security is always questionable and every decision gets scrutinized by millions of fans and analysts. If they bench Dillon Gabriel for Shedeur and Gabriel never gets another real chance, they've basically admitted they wasted a third-round pick. If they keep starting Gabriel and the offense continues to struggle while Shedeur sits, they look stubborn and afraid to make tough decisions. If they start Shedeur and he struggles, they've created a quarterback controversy for no reason and damaged whatever confidence Gabriel had built. There's really no easy answer, which is probably why they're leaking information and testing the waters rather than just making a definitive move. From a pure football perspective, though, this feels like something Cleveland needs to do. You have to find out what you have in Shedeur Sanders. You invested the pick, you brought him to Cleveland, you've put him through training camp and practice and the scout team grind. At some point, you need to see him play real football against real competition with real stakes. 4 games to close the season is perfect. It's not so many games that you're completely abandoning Gabriel if things don't work out, but it's enough of a sample size to actually learn something meaningful. One game can be a fluke, good or bad. 4 games is a trend. 4 games tells you if a quarterback can handle adversity, can make adjustments, can improve week to week, can handle different defensive looks and game plans designed specifically to stop him. What happens if Shedeur comes out and plays lights out? What if he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Jets? What if he leads a game-winning drive in the 4th quarter? What if he does all the things that Dillon Gabriel hasn't been able to do? Suddenly you've got a real problem on your hands, but it's a good problem. It's the problem of having too much quarterback talent rather than not enough. It's the problem of having to decide which young quarterback gets to lead your franchise into the future. And honestly, that's a problem most NFL teams would love to have. The national media is starting to pay attention too. People who cover football for a living are starting to ask the same questions Browns fans have been asking for weeks. Why isn't Shedeur playing? What are they waiting for? What more does he need to prove in practice before he gets a real opportunity? And the longer Cleveland waits, the louder those questions are going to get. Every week that passes with Dillon Gabriel struggling and Shedeur on the bench is another week of mounting pressure on the coaching staff and front office to do something different. At some point, the noise becomes too loud to ignore. There's also the business side of this that people don't talk about enough. Shedeur Sanders is a massive draw. Love him or hate him, people tune in when he plays. He's got name recognition that most rookies never achieve. He's got a built-in fan base from his college days. He's got social media buzz that translates to ratings and interest. The NFL is a business, and businesses care about attention and eyeballs and revenue. Starting Shedeur Sanders would immediately make the Browns more interesting nationally. Suddenly, you're not just another struggling team trying to figure things out. You're the team with Deion Sanders' son at quarterback, which comes with storylines and drama and intrigue that networks love. That doesn't mean you make football decisions based purely on ratings, but it's definitely a factor that organizations consider. Let me be clear about something though. None of this matters if Shedeur can't actually play. All the hype in the world doesn't help you win football games if you can't read defenses, make accurate throws, and lead an offense. The practice clips look great, but practice isn't the same as Sunday afternoon with a pass rush in your face and cornerbacks who can actually cover. The belief from teammates is encouraging, but belief doesn't complete passes. The famous last name opens doors, but it doesn't win games. At some point, Shedeur Sanders has to go out there and prove he can do this at the NFL level. No excuses, no asterisks, just production. That's what this is ultimately about. Can he play or can't he? Everything else is just noise. My gut feeling, based on everything I'm hearing and seeing, is that Cleveland is going to give Shedeur his shot sooner rather than later. The season's slipping away, the fans are restless, the offense needs a spark, and most importantly, they need to know what they have before the offseason hits, and they're forced to make decisions about the draft and free agency without fully understanding their quarterback situation. If they wait too long and then try to evaluate Shedeur in the final week or 2 of a lost season, that's not really fair to anyone. You need to give him real reps with real stakes in games that still matter, even if your playoff hopes are slim. The Jets game after the bye week makes perfect sense as a starting point. It's a winnable game against a team that's also struggling. It's on the road, which means less pressure than a home debut where the crowd might be extra intense. It gives Shedeur a full 2 weeks to prepare, rather than throwing him in on short rest. And it starts a 4-game stretch where the Browns can properly evaluate what they have. If he plays well, great. If he struggles, you've still got Gabriel as an option. If he's somewhere in between, you've learned something valuable about his strengths and weaknesses that will inform your offseason planning. What makes this situation so compelling is that everybody has an opinion and nobody really knows what's going to happen. Some people are convinced Shedeur is going to be a star. Others think he's overhyped and destined to disappoint. Some believe Dillon Gabriel just needs more time and better play calling. Others think he's already shown enough to prove he's not the answer. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, which is what makes actually watching these guys play so important. Talk is cheap. Analysis and predictions and hot takes don't mean anything compared to what happens when the ball is snapped and you've got to make a play. I keep coming back to how Shedeur has handled this whole situation because I think it says a lot about his character and his understanding of what it takes to succeed in the NFL. He could have complained about not playing. He could have had his dad make noise in the media. He could have sulked or half-assed his preparation or made things difficult for the coaching staff. Instead, he's done the opposite. He's been a professional, worked his tail off, supported his teammates, and prepared like a starter even though he's listed as a backup. That's exactly what you want to see from a young quarterback. The guys who succeed in this league are the ones who can handle adversity, stay focused when things aren't going their way, and be ready when opportunity finally knocks. Shedeur's checked every one of those boxes. The Browns franchise has been looking for stability at quarterback for what feels like forever. They've tried so many different guys over the years, made so many mistakes in the draft, wasted so many opportunities to get it right. Maybe Shedeur Sanders is the answer they've been searching for. Maybe he's not, but they owe it to themselves and their fans to find out. Keeping him on the bench while the season circles the drain doesn't accomplish anything except prolonging the uncertainty. Football is about making tough decisions and living with the results. It's time for Cleveland to make a decision about their quarterback situation and see what happens. The practice footage tells us Shedeur's ready. The whispers from inside the building tell us his moment is coming. The calendar tells us there's not much time left to figure this out. Everything is pointing towards Shedeur Sanders getting his shot soon. And when that happens, we're all going to find out whether the hype was justified or just another case of Cleveland hoping for a miracle that never materializes. Either way, it's going to be fascinating to watch. This is what makes football great. The uncertainty, the pressure, the high stakes, the human drama of young men trying to achieve their dreams while the whole world watches and judges. Shedeur Sanders is about to walk into that fire and we'll all see what he's really made of.